Welcome everyone to the Schools and Education Committee meeting for December. My name is Patricia Laria, the Chair of Schools and Ed. We are waiting for one of our guest panelist speaker who's not arrived yet. So I'm gonna give him some time to arrive, like another 5 minutes, so he will be on mute until that time. Thank you. Okay, welcome again, everyone, to our Schools and Education Committee. Patricia Laria, I'm the chair. Cheryl Wu, who's virtual, is our vice chair, Dr. Cheryl Wu. And then I'll have my committee members who are present go around the room and introduce themselves.
Ann Hager, committee member. Mark Fitzgerald, committee member.
Rich Capapolo, community member.
Yeah, welcome. We have some other members that will be arriving later, and I will introduce them as they arrive. There's some
They have no sound on Zoom.
no sound. Oh, Mark just
Oh, we did this. We've had this before. What was this trick?
Wait, I can hear you. I can hear you guys.
Great.
Oh, good. That's a relief.
all right. Thank you. You can hear wonderful. I have some housekeeping rules to go over. Please be respectful to whoever is speaking. Please do not type derogatory comments in the chat. The Zoom chat function is open as long as it is adhered to throughout the meeting. Attendees will be on mute. If you have questions, I guess you can type them into the chat, or we will then ask questions after the committee is able to ask questions. I see that we have some principals as attendees. I just acknowledge them. I see Principal Rennie Fong from PS 130, who's here as an attendee, and Zainab Askan, Principal Zainab Askan at IS 289 with us. Welcome. I don't see, do we have any?
We have Nicole Barr.
I see Nicole Barth, who is the CB2 rep for Councilmember Eric Botcher, present in the chat. And I'm going to, and I see Emma Smith, another committee member who's joining us virtually. I'm going to pass the baton over to Anne, who was instrumental in arranging this meeting, to do the introduction.
Great. Okay, so after our November meeting, we had a discussion about how we could best support the asylum-seeking families, which we're now calling our new neighbors, because it's a lot friendlier and I think a better term, and the status is various. So we talked about how we could best support those families and students as well as the schools where they're attending. And so I reached out to some people who I know are very on top of this issue. Lupe was the first person I spoke to. So this is Lupe Hernandez, who is one of our panelists. Lupe is a New York City public school parent, a member of the Citywide Council on Special Education, a member of Project Open Arms, a member of Manhattan Borough Response Team, and a member of Transportation and Temporary Housing Task Force, accountable, as well as many other things, just basically a community activist around education. And then the other person that she put us in touch with was Gavin Healy, who is a New York City public school parent and member of Community Education Council for D2. So when I approached Lupe, she said that while it was really important to be supporting these families, there was actually sort of a huge issue that had just come down the pike that had to be sort of top priority. And so I'm going to hand over the presentation to Lupe and to Gavin to talk about what's going on.
I'd like to mention, did we introduce Sadie?
No, oh,
We didn't.
go ahead.
And actually, would it be okay if we started there? Yeah. So Sadie, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sadie Campo Amor. I go by the pronouns she, ella, and I'm not sure where to look, but hello.
The owls are looking at
These
you.
two.
Look at the owls.
Oh, the owls.
Great.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Here.
Hello. And I'm the Chief Equity Officer for the New York City Comptroller, Brad Lander, and we have been doing a bunch of work advocating on behalf of our asylum-seeking families, our migrant families, our new neighbors. I appreciate Anne's reframing. These are our classmates, these are our friends, these are our people in our community at this point who have been deeply integrated into our school communities, and certainly into our neighborhoods. So the comptroller has been particularly vocal about the 60-day law and particularly the right to shelter law. That wasn't always in existence, but has been since 1981. It has prevented New York City from seeing thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the street. We believe that it's important to uphold. We also believe that when the city discriminates against families, against people, it causes harm to all New Yorkers. There is a cost. There is a moral cost, and there's also a literal cost to New Yorkers' pockets. Additional bus routes, new school communities having to integrate folks, whether that's with different teachers and different people and whole different neighborhoods. And so we are not only advocating for, again, the moral imperative for the legal imperative to uphold the right to shelter, the moral imperative to uphold the right to people being in shelter, and that we treat our classmates, our students' classmates, our children's classmates, friends like friends. That's right. But also we are urging the mayor and all New Yorkers to be very clear that there's also a cost to this, right? That it costs money, but it also costs a bunch of different, costs us all a bunch of different ways. So I'm happy to take more questions. I'm happy to speak more on it, but I thought that was a good starter. And the comptroller is particularly serious about it. I don't know how much you know about the Children's March that's occurring on December 19th at 3:45 at City Hall Park. The comptroller and my own family will be there to make sure that we are standing with the families of all New Yorkers and saying that obstructing the law and obstructing the right to shelter and telling families that they have to move December 28th in the frigid cold and move into tents, which are sites that our office has seen. It is obscene, it's cruel, it is illegal, it is wrong, and we can't use words that are stronger to urge our mayor to do right by family and also uphold the legacy of New York City, which we all, I think, are pretty clear was built by immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadie.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know about the march. I didn't even know.
I didn't either.
Did you text? Somebody text?
I
What time is the march?
It's at 3:45 on December 19th. It's being pulled together by stakeholders like the New York Immigration Coalition. I know that Make the Road New York is a part of it. I think that friends and colleagues at AQE and Legal Aid and Bronx Defenders, Queens Defenders, and a bunch of other colleagues and advocates for children and parents and families will be a part of it. And it's supposed to be child friendly and family friendly. We know that sometimes these spaces can feel maybe not as welcoming, but this is an intentionally welcoming space where we want to see an intergenerational showing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So without further ado. Oops.
Oh, I was gonna say, do you want to, I think Gavin may be the best person because he was the first to introduce the a resolution opposing the 60-day rule that we are seeing. And I definitely approached Gavin immediately when we heard about this because we knew that the impact on our students, families, as well as our schools are more than anyone could ever imagine. I can't even describe the impact beyond the budgets. It's a lot. So I think we could start with the first resolution that was passed within the Community Education Council for District 2. And I thank you for leading that work.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you all. So yeah, it was this resolution really came out of us looking at the 60-day rule and having, you know, so CEC2, which I'm from, and we passed this resolution. You know, we have a number of shelters located within CEC2. I mean, traditionally, we've had about 500 or so students in temporary housing in the bounds of CEC2, which stretches from, you know, East 6th Street down the park, basically everything below 59th Street, and everything except like a bit of the Lower East Side and Chinatown. So it includes, you know, the bounds of CB2, but also some other community boards as well. And just to put it into perspective for like this area, like there's a number of, there's, maybe close to a dozen different shelters in Times Square, but some of them, for example, the students who live there are actually zoned for schools that are located in the geographic bounds of CB2. Like, for example, most of the students, their zone middle school is 75 Morton, which is, nearby. And so traditionally there've been about 500 students in temporary housing, but over the last year or so, there's been about 2,000. So a lot of them are our new neighbors. And so many of the families in these shelters have already received notices under the 60-day rule, saying that they need to vacate like basically the week between Christmas and New Year's. And so they don't really know necessarily where they're going to go. And in visiting some of the schools, most of the social workers and principals of the schools have said, well, even though under federal law, you're entitled to stay at your original school, it's very difficult because you may be moved. You don't know where you'll be moved. You could be moved to Floyd Bennett Field, which is, very difficult to commute from Floyd Bennett Field to 75 Morton. But then again, they also, so most of the principals have said, just stay at your school. But then again, of course, they realize that this can be difficult for families with really like young children to bring them, and the transportation is so difficult. But also there's no guarantee that after 2 months, they won't be moved again. So it's, since students have already had a lot of disruption to their education, it's best to keep them give them that stability and stay in the school. So this is like detrimental to those students. It's also detrimental to their classmates who've, made friends and, want to build those relationships and can't. But it's also, I think, as Sadie, as you pointed out, it's also detrimental to our whole city, because it's like these schools have to budget and plan, and it's very difficult when you have students. Students could potentially move up to 5 times in a year, and I think we all intuitively know that if you had to move, 5 times in a year, that would be extremely disruptive to your family. And October 31st is the enrollment cutoff date. So budgeting is based on the students that are enrolled in a school as of October 31st. And there's a process to appeal if there's like significant like movement in of students after that date, but it's cumbersome, and principals have to go through that extra step. And then on top of that, like you can't really staff on a 2-month basis. You want to hire bilingual, paraprofessionals, social workers, teachers, and that you can't hire someone on a temp contract. So that's kind of why we introduced this resolution. We wanted to bring that stability. We knew we had a lot of students in temporary housing, a lot of new neighbors in our district. And so, we hope that we could urge the mayor to kind of walk back this rule, which we think is kind of like harmful to all of us. And it's kind of a very like short-sighted solution to like what's a longer term issue.
Yeah, I can add to that, because I think to Sadie's point, it's not cost efficient. Like, we know as New Yorkers, we barely can get our own human resources assistance in 60 days. I know families that are still trying to get their pandemic EBT cards replaced from the new addition that was provided earlier in this school year. So you have families that reached out back in September, and they're still waiting for their a replacement for that pandemic EBT card. That's just food stamps, So I think it's unrealistic to think that a family could find permanent shelter in 60 days. It's inhumane, and the math doesn't make sense. I'll say that after CECD2 passed this, it was brought to the Citywide Council for Special Education, because for parents that rely on school bus, and usually that is our students with disabilities. But for those that may not know, our students in temporary housing have also always been eligible for school busing, and those in foster care as well. Historically, we have had busing issues, but that has compounded when families are moved. And this is not the first time we're seeing this, specifically in Community Board 2. In fact, 2021, during the Omicron holiday break, we had 3 to 5 family shelters close in Community Board District 2 that forced about 3,500 families into the boroughs of Bronx and Queens. These families did not know that they were going to be moved. They showed up at their house, their home, at the shelter, and were told you have 30 minutes to pack up your belongings and get on a bus. And they did not know where they were going until they arrived at the new shelter. And we saw when we came back from that break, there were 0 bus routes for these students to get back to school in the Community Board 2 Manhattan area. And as Gavin pointed out, the right to stay at your school that is provided through the McKinney-Vento Act is unfortunately, unrealistically, really available to families to make a choice, because and a lot of times families have more than one student and those students are not going to the same school. So to try to have a family that's also working, get their kids out of borough to, it was impossible. We lost 3,500 students in District 2 that particular, just in those weeks. So we see that this does not work, and that was prior to an influx of our newest New Yorkers coming here. So we know that if it didn't work before, I don't understand where they think that it's going to be able to work this time, especially because we have students currently without bus routes that have been waiting since the beginning of the school year, and they have been relying on bus service for years, and this is the case. I also want to point out to Gavin's fact as far as school budgets and where our principals are at this year as regard to the mid-budget adjustment that just passed based on October 31st enrollment. I also want to point out a fact that was shared by the Comptroller's Office, and I appreciate Lara sharing this with us at one of the previous city council hearings a couple weeks ago, is that Project Open Arms was providing $2,000 per student to the schools last year as a way to provide supports for the schools and for the influx of students coming in after October 31st. This year, that funding was not given or is not going to be allotted. And the reason for that was because we worked really hard on revamping our fair student funding and providing an additional weight for the very first time. Mind you, this work began way before last year. This is work that have been, we have been providing these recommendations for years, and they were finally approved last year to give students in temporary housing as well as foster care children an additional weight to our schools to support them. And it was a huge win. However, what's not being said, and I thank the Comptroller's Office for really pointing this out, is that those additional weights for our students currently enrolled in school is not accurate, meaning the schools only received that additional weight for students in temporary housing and foster care up until December of 2022. So the additional 20,000 students that we have enrolled since January of 2023 till now are not getting any additional weights to their fair student funding, and the schools are missing out on about $11 million worth of funding. And that is not even including the 5% cuts that we're seeing with the November budget plan and the additional 10% cuts that we will see in the spring, in addition to the $1.2 billion that we're going to be losing through the remainder of our COVID ARPA funding. Again, the impact is beyond most people realizing, and I think moving families is only going to cost the city more, because they're going to have to do another intake of these families where they were already situated in a stable place where their kids were learning, and we know that consistency is key for a lot of these families.
They've been incorporated into school communities.
It is.
There's, those figures you just shared, they're not in our resolution, but I feel like that information should be in there.
It was recently, we only found this out at a city council hearing that, you know, I was shocked to hear that, to be honest with you. And very disappointed, because I know that our principals are struggling to, you know, make do with the budgets that they received. And we know that even with the mid-year adjustments, we saw that, yes, 600 schools were going to lose money from the mid-year adjustments. Over 600 schools were losing money, or excuse me, 800 schools were gaining money, but that money that those schools are going to be receiving doesn't come until January or February, and then principals are forced to spend that money by March. And I think we can all agree that it's probably very difficult to hire anyone in the middle of the school year.
And the funds are for students they've had since September.
Correct.
So it's not like
Correct.
they've been trying to meet all of those students' needs without those funds.
Exactly.
Okay, so what figures would you like to add? We should note this one.
I'm just saying, was it Project Open Arms?
Project Open Arms.
For student?
Yes, but that was only last year. It was like emergency, and that was through COVID funding, you know.
And that was ended because of the change in fair student funding to add the weight for students in temporary housing.
Correct.
And these were grants? Well,
No, that was COVID funding that they just allocated as an emergency to help schools be able to support students. And at that time, principals were told that they could purchase backpacks and purchase shoes and things of that nature. Just like a lot of our Title I funding can be, but that procurement process is very lengthy and exhausting. And a lot of times when we're talking about basic essential needs, it's very difficult to find the bidding, like to get 3 bids for a particular item that you may need for a particular student.
And you need some of
Through
those
the
things
deep.
fast.
Yes, right, exactly.
Do we have any other questions from our committee members present?
I'm just not, I'm sorry, I don't understand that, at 60 days, families are supposed to leave a shelter or reapply for a shelter. And they may be kept in one after that, or they may be moved to another.
Yeah.
So are we asking that they be kept in the same one? So are we asking for the 60 days to be waived, or that the review happens and they're kept in the same?
So waive it. I mean, that's what the resolution is asking for them to eliminate the 60-day.
Limited.
Eliminate it and for us and keep families where they are right now. There is, yeah, and I mean, there are individuals as well, and living in tents, I just think in any moment in time is difficult. I think in the winter, in cold and freezing temperatures, is inhumane and cruel. And I will just name that the restrictions apply to 4,300 migrant families, which are roughly 15,000 individuals that are staying in city shelter system run by the health and hospitals. That's not the majority of the families with kids that are staying in facilities from DHS. I'll also just name that our office is in agreement with the administration that we need support from the state and the feds to support our families. So I want to uplift and affirm what Lupe is saying, but also name, to your point, there are 2 important threads of this conversation. One, fund our students properly. But I think in this particular moment, given the time frame, our office is really leaning in and saying, let's keep families where they are. Let's keep for continuity, for safety, for community reasons, for legal reasons, for moral reasons, and also for just basic humanity reasons. Yeah.
Why did the mayor feel that they should be moved out? Is it because more migrant families?
That's a question.
Yeah.
No, I get the expensive fees, but are there more migrant I believe they're still coming, so is it that, where do those go? Those new,
So yesterday I saw Harvey posted, there's a Lower Manhattan reticketing center at St. Bridget's. And you remember what the weather was like yesterday, right? There were 1,000 families standing outside yesterday trying to sort
okay,
their situation. So, I mean, I don't know if those were new neighbors, but regardless, the system, there's something. If we can keep people where they are, I think that benefits the entire, everybody.
keeping where they are, and the new, just the new, those who are more recent arrivals. And other. Or even other spaces that are not, so as to not be as disruptive to those that are already established, okay?
I have to also say there's in addition to the DHS shelter system, which we in Community Board 2 has existed here and has been very present. Aside from the HERCs, the H&H hospital run shelters, there are also families going through the Office of Emergency Management. And these families and individuals are being placed in shelters for only 28 days. So there is a third, agency now that is addressing the issue that you are raising. Because yes, we are seeing the fact that there are pretty much 0 rooms at this time. And that is a fact, right? But we also know that within our housing system, we also have many vacant, affordable housing that we could, I think, money and time being spent as far as intake and having to have a family go through an intake process every 60 days. Just imagine that energy being put towards finding permanent housing for those that are eligible and qualify.
Job assistance.
Papers so that.
Yes.
Can work.
Yeah.
And then that's the third strand,
Right.
which is that we want to make sure that people can get to work and contribute to our economy. Families want to work, families want to provide for their kids. They don't want to stay in one room. Do you want to stay in one room with your entire family for months? No, but you certainly don't want to get kicked out and be put in a tent in the middle of December or January either. So I think, we want to be clear, fund our kids adequately, yes. Make sure that people have legal access to get the papers and documents that they need so that they can begin to contribute to our New York City economy, yes. And we're faced in this moment with the HERCs, and that stands for Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Centers. People are throwing around a lot of acronyms. We're talking about the HERCs right now. That's the 60-day rule that's up for debate. We're 1,500 current families who are asylum seeker or migrant. I'm using those interchangeably because I don't know how folks are fully identifying. But our neighbors, needless to say, should not be put out on the street or put out in tents end of December or January. Or ever.
I mean, sure, the timing of this is extremely cruel because students may only have the support with the school. So like your parent coordinator, your students in temporary housing liaison and coordinators at the school. You're doing this during a break when no one's going to be at the school for the families to be able to communicate and say, hey, I moved here and I'm going to need busing or I'm going to need this. Just how is a family going to communicate with their school community during a break? That's when everybody is home and the schools are closed. It's their one lifeline. Many shelters, especially our HERCs, the Humanitarian Emergency Response Relief Centers, they're not always equipped with the school-based support teams. They are
More information from the administration. They're not communicating anything to these families right now either. I mean, people are really, honestly, I think we're all really stressed out because of the holidays and add on these additional layers of coming from turmoil, coming from trauma, leaving a country because you're thinking that New York City is gonna offer you something better, or the United States.
These are also families that have found, many of them have founded their place in a community. Like, these are families like at PS3, we do events that are like, you know, that bring these families together with families that have been there longer and try to make them with older kids that don't necessarily, we've helped to provide food, like Christmas gifts and whatever, but like, then there's a relationship that's built. Like, there ends up being this tight relationship, and the idea of those, it makes me want to cry when I think about my kid going to school the day after break and having a friend just gone and no information about where they've gone. Like, it hurts everybody. Of course, it hurts those students and families the most, but it's harmful to everybody.
It's disrupting all of the kids.
And New Yorkers will have to foot the bill if we have to do, the Post is reporting over $600,000 worth of bus route changes. But I think it's in the low millions, if I've spoken to my DOE informants correctly. I think that they are also, our folks at the Department of Education are also not looking forward to additional bus routes.
As we're having funding cut in general.
And we have a huge national bus driver shortage. So even if we had the money for these routes, do we have the drivers, the paras, the matrons, the attendants? I want to remind folks, the bus drivers.
We narrowly avoided that bus strike.
And it's still has not been finalized, this contract. So there's a lot of things up in the air.
And I would say one thing that was really clear from the City Council Education Committee hearing the other week, the oversight hearing, was that the administration definitely is unprepared. I mean, you could see that in the responses to the questions. And I felt generally bad for them, because I think they genuinely want to do the right thing, and they want to, do their jobs, and they want to help these newcomers. But like, they don't know themselves. Like, they're kind of taken by surprise by what's going on. And so it feels like we're playing high stakes poker, but the chips are these families. And that's kind of it's a real shame. I mean, I know that our mayor is pushing for more funding from the federal government, but this isn't the way to do it. And the people working in these agencies need that, foresight. They need to be able to plan, and they just.
In those meetings, did they argue against this? Are they warning of some unintended consequence?
City Council has introduced a legislation that I believe is around October 4th, and it is prohibiting any limitation to shelter stays. So it's an opposition to the 60-day rule. Yeah.
For everybody.
For everybody, correct.
There was originally the 60-day rule, I believe, was introduced for non-families. And then it was extended to families. And the reason it was not introduced for families are all the things that we've been talking about. And I think that's part of why this has sort of come on the stage so much.
Why was it reintroduced?
Well, and in fact, what happened is they put the 60-day rule for families, and the other individuals that had originally been offered or been given these 60-day rules, they are now under 30-day. So single adults actually are being given 30-day notices that are not being talked about too much. But just to put in perspective, again, I don't see, just my own personal experience in having my own family go through this path. And it does not seem realistic or cost efficient to have every 30 days an individual have to go through this intake system again, to have families do this every 60 days. It's more burdensome on those that are actually trying to do this intake process. And it just seems like it's going to create more chaos, havoc, and it's just gonna cost us more.
And expense. I mean, that's the thing. I'm still trying to figure out why this makes sense to anybody. Why can't our new neighbors stay where they are until permanent housing is found?
Designed to be disruptive,
Well,
Yes,
right? Like, this is the whole point, and is punishment by administration, right? Like, this is not, I had a smile on my face, like the incredulity of all of us at how could this possibly be, because it's not a law, it's a feature, right? Like the whole point is to make it so horrible that people tell their friends not to come here,
Don't
as if that's how people come here.
Don't go to New York.
Right.
I think even beyond that, this is, you know, the way.
Governor Abbott.
For the agencies in my life. And this is kind of how it works, you know? They do these kind of unnecessary things because there's a contract and somebody else gets paid. And it's.
Oh, no, I'm saying it's a little bit different. I'm saying they're purposely making it, all right, I'm adding more benevolence to my.
It's the site. You can't help but think that's, it's yet to deter go anywhere else, and it's very harrowing and heartbreaking.
Can I say, can I,
Oh, hi, Cheryl. Yeah, I was gonna get to you next, but I also want to acknowledge our two committee members that arrived, Matt Metzger and Keen Berger.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Cheryl.
Afternoon, everybody.
oh yeah, no problem. Welcome you guys, but I just want to say that this really reminds me of how our federal government would march Native American families, you know, basically separate them from each other. And as well as how this country has always treated, you know, people of African descent, right? So this is not, I mean, this really harks back to those, you know, those are sort of in history, or, you know, even the marching of the Native Americans, indigenous people. Some of them occur still quite recently, but this is, you know, this is the same tactic. And, you know, I know we're voting on the resolution tonight, but this is really just a long line of the quintessential American way of treating people that are not part of the majority, AKA white, right? Like you destabilize the basic family structure, you move them around unnecessarily, you basically drive them just, you know, just the heartbreak, the difficulty, you know, I mean, they do it in the wintertime. I mean, it's at this point, it's just like, you know, like Matt said, it's administrative, like Mar said, I mean, it's inhumane, but this is like, it's so American, but you know what I mean? And it just sort of like, I feel like maybe we should use some stronger language. Like, do you want to continue the shameful history that this country has continuously perpetrated against anybody who's not white? You know, who dare to be here, even those of us, you know, the Native Americans who have already been here. That's basically what they do. It's the same thing. You just move people around unnecessarily, break families up, make it difficult for them, cause illness. Like these kids, if they're moving, you know, every 2 months or whatever, if they're outside for long periods of time, they're gonna get sick, right? And, you know, like a lot of us have said, you know, also tell their friends not come here, but this is like, it's ridiculous. So anyway, so that I just wanted to point that out, like, you know, when we kind of are talking about the logistics of it, I mean, it's very similar to what's always happened in this country. It's disgusting. So anyway.
We have two questions. in
Yeah,
the
we have two
Q&A,
questions. Yeah,
And one. in
Thank
the
you,
chat.
Cheryl.
Thank you.
thank you, Cheryl. I'm gonna go to Colleen O'Connor Grant's question and then Jeffries. Colleen, do you want to ask this in person, virtually, or would you like me to read it out? Should I promote her? Let me,
I'm
principal,
principal,
say
say no.
you know what?
Also,
I can't.
I don't read it.
I'll read it. Okay. Colleen's question, what are the concerns about impact on our public schools with regards to the 60-day rule? Can you create a list that we can get behind?
Can you read that one more time? What are the impacts of the 60-day rule on our public schools?
With regard, yeah. And can you create a list that we can get behind?
Has everybody seen the reza?
Yeah.
The resolution, can we post the resolution in that
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Oh.
resolution here? This is the draft resolution that we're still working on that was proposed here.
Thank you.
Of course. Do you
Mario,
have-
put
do
it
you
in
have
chat form.
That was, sorry.
Yeah.
I would say, I think it's responsive to that question.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right, and the Spanish, okay. While you're,
So, I mean, just physical well-being, mental well-being of children, caregivers, educators. Stability and of continuity of care, both educational care, both who's caring for them on the bus on the way to school, and how parents are giving care to their kids because their daily routines will be disrupted. Certainly educators will be impacted as well. Children who are sitting in the classroom, teachers who have planned lessons and planned just daily work that includes every one of their people in the community. The budgets will be impacted because of bus routes first. I believe that that will just be the largest dollar amount, but to Gavin and Lupe's point, the way school budgets are done based on schedules, that will be disruptive. And then there are also many of the families who have young early childhood education going children who are reliant on Promise NYC, and it means another relocation to a part of the city, which has an impact, of course, on the families who have to move and then get another voucher to go to another place, but also the early childcare providers who are funded per head at an early childhood setting. So there are multiple different things, but I really tried to stick with the more logistical ones. Certainly the moral heartstrings pull on all of us as well. And I didn't say this because that's not why I'm here this evening, but I am a public school parent in District 2. And this is just as personal to me as it is professional.
And to Sadie's point, I want to add that in regards to not only the budget piece, but oh dear, did I just it just lost my mind.
Budget, bus fare, student funding.
No, it wasn't fair student funding. but
So the fact that in elementary schools, it's also by head.
3K, that's what it was. Promise NYC. So 3K Promise NYC are CBOs. I just want to name that many of these CBOs that have been educating our youngest New Yorkers are struggling to keep the lights on to begin with because they haven't been paid in like a year. Like many of these providers are still waiting on payment from TOE from over a year ago. I can tell you, even one of the largest CPCs, you know, they're having to take out loans. I know in my own son, last year, he was an extended day and extended year program, which is 10 hours free daycare for many New York families that you probably qualify. You probably don't realize that you qualify. I think the family of 4 was like around 90 grand. And if you make less than that, you actually qualify for extended day and year. Many folks don't even know that exists, but these programs are taking out loans, and my sons could not pay their staff to stay the remainder of that day. Like it's usually from 8 to 6. And unfortunately, because they were working off of loans and waiting for payments from the DOE, that program had to end at 4. You know, we had to pick up the kids earlier. And if you're working still and you're trying, you know, so it's going to impact, because if they're not even getting paid for the students they have, and then they lose that 3rd or 4th student, and I'm saying that because there's classrooms that only have 3 kids in them because the outreach was non-existent. That these programs a lot of these programs are shutting down. I mean, we've had programs that have been in existence since the 70s that are closing. And there are families that need these programs, and these seats could be occupied. Yeah.
As far as I know, all education in New York City is funded per child. And so if those are shifted throughout the year, 5 times per family, but that's also on a rolling basis.
School.
So it's like constantly the number of students is changing, fluctuating, and that funding there's always a huge delay.
Okay, I have, my Spanish interpreter has a question. Go, am I a co-host on here?
Oh, I'm sorry, you should be, but.
Could you ask your question?
Thank you, Rennie. Thank you for being here this evening.
Did you see it go already?
I see them on the screen. They just need to unmute and talk.
I'm gonna ask to unmute.
Oh,
No, I don't have a question. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, then I'll go to the next question. That was from Jeffrey Rowland. Jeffrey, should I promote him to ask a question or just? Okay. Jeffrey Rowland.
Yeah, he's,
Jeffrey, you can now unmute.
Oh, it declined.
He declined.
okay.
All right, then I'll read the question.
Hang on, allow him to talk, maybe?
I think he declined.
Okay,
He might to be promoted, maybe you can just.
You can ask the question for
There
me,
you go.
just read it the way it is.
okay.
can hear him.
Has the demographic and seat needs report been released? This information is important as it will affect SBA's decision regarding the Bleecker School and the impact to the supermarket and community garden. That's what his question in relation, I guess, to this issue. And he said perhaps we can add SCA funds could be put to better use.
I
Is that-
could say that we know SCA has like, if you look at the current capital funding.
Oh, you want to see the question?
I just want to see the question. It'd be easier for me to.
Yeah, visually.
Budget report doesn't usually come till the next year.
The next year, but even we see this year, currently, we know that there is a lot of funding that was cut from the original 5-year plan that does not meet the need of even the student body prior. So like 5 years ago, we knew we needed more seats in District 2 and Community Board 2, and specifically regarding this school site that has been in kind of a limbo state for you guys. This is going to impact even more because we know that we need to meet the new class size law mandate. And currently what the capital funding looks like as of right now is we are not going to meet the 40% threshold that we were anticipating to do so by next year. In fact, our class sizes, our class sizes have increased. We were pretty much almost at 40% even prior to this school year starting, and now we're going backwards where we're going towards 30.
Enrollment.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what Mr. Rowland's connection between demographic and seat need is regarding SCA. Usually SCA is just related to seat need, and as I'm sure that we all saw, the DOE was touting an enrollment increase for the first time in many years. This district once, because I have sat at this table with many of you when we built 75 Morton or PS 340 as a result of overcrowding, is not facing those same things. And so I think the comptroller agrees with the administration that we are so excited about an enrollment increase. And we also want to make the direct correlation between that wonderful enrollment increase and our asylum-seeking families are really the result and the reason why we're seeing enrollment increases. So yes, we love increases. We also want to make sure that we know who those people are contributing to our enrollment is. And
May I add? May I add to that? It seems to me that given that funding is such a problem for so many of these programs that you've been discussing, might it be advisable to seek, at least from the community board, some effort towards postponing the deadline for the SCA to decide about the school again? Postponing it would then put it into, I realize the difficulty in that, but it would put it into a different budget group later on. We wouldn't necessarily lose the school, and we might be able to postpone the decision on that school to more economic favorable times. And then if we need the school, we get the school. And if we don't need the school, we don't get the school. But that decision shouldn't be made under the pressure that we are currently facing, where they're talking about 5% cuts, then 11% cuts, and then money lost from COVID. And pretty soon you have to wonder, shouldn't that money be immediately, the current monies be spent differently, and postpone the forced decision that they might have to make, and how it's going to impact the community both ways. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Jeffrey.
thank you, Jeffrey. I think you were talking about something else. Regarding the
Yeah.
district school, Jeffrey, we still, it's still in the hands of the SCA. They will give us an answer at the end of this month, and I have not gotten any responses with regard to that. And as soon as I know, you will know. Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that. I was just thinking that if we could postpone the deadline, maybe they could spend their money even on temporary classrooms for the immigrants, or something more sensible than a building that may or may not be needed.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeff.
We're Sadie has to leave us. If you could,
Do you have a life or something?
Yeah, he's over there.
Thank you for lending your mother to.
Patient
Very much.
would you like to share with us some of the more of the great things that the comptroller is doing?
Oh, about this?
Yeah.
Well, I think that our focus at the office is, if it is one that's grounded in fiduciary responsibility. And what that means is what is going to get New Yorkers the best bang for their buck, and really looking at every solution from a place of humanity, but also a place of cost, right? And that, like Heather McGee so eloquently puts, there is the sort of sum of our, what is it, solidarity dividends. That is when we work together, when we support one another, similar to what Paul Wellstone says, you know, we all do better when we all do better. I think more pointedly in this moment, that there is an explicit cost of discriminating and harming families, right? And we just discussed it, so I don't need to reiterate, but there's a cost on busing, there'll be a cost on schools, there'll be a cost on early childhood centers, there'll be a moral cost on the teachers that are gonna have to figure out what do they say to our kids when swaths of children aren't in class, early childhood centers, principals. At this point, many of our families that we're talking about that are facing the 60-day limit have been integrated into our school communities for now a year and a half. So we are asking the administration to have a heart, to not uphold this 28 and 60-day rules, to fund schools fairly, for sure. And also a plea to the state, you know, a plea to the governor. There are a lot of cuts coming across all aspects of our city right now, and we really need to think as a city, how are we going to have revenue generating opportunities from the state, from the city, that will help offset some of these costs that will, again, cause harm. So that's sort of the 2 feet on the ground that we're bringing to this. We hope that you and anybody else, school communities, will join us on December 19th at 3:45 p.m. at City Hall Park to do a family-friendly march around the park. We hope you bring your children. We hope you bring your parents. This could be an intergenerational space where the comptroller will be and my family will be. And we just want to thank you all. We want to continue to be a resource to community boards and to advocates to provide any numbers or any data that we can. That's really the best way that we can show up in this world. But thank you so very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for
Sadie.
coming. Thank you, Alvin, for being so.
Thank you. Yeah, we like administration change. I'm like holding my breath. It's like, are they gonna be as good as the last?
I want to acknowledge that we have two principals, Principal Fong and Principal Afghan in the.
It's 130 and I say 189? 89. Just 89. I'm so sorry. So many numbers, so little time.
Would you like to add anything that we have not discussed, maybe from a principal perspective?
I know 89's principal had a question.
Let me promote.
Oh, yeah, I think that those notices were supposed to start going out this week.
No, we've had families.
Have they been going out?
Families have been receiving them as early as October.
I read, but the first date
That they have to be out.
have to be out, it starts the day after Christmas.
Correct.
27, 27.
The 26th.
28.
The 28th, okay, so,
Right. We've also heard the day after Christmas. So,
yeah, I did the math.
yeah,
That's what I came up with.
yeah, it's that's why I mentioned it is literally smack in the middle of school break.
But even those people, like, they haven't, the 60 are they getting their notices at 60 days? Because from what I read, it's like you could get a notice. No, it's 60 days from when you've been there,
Except
but
that
they
they've
might
been
not
there the whole
even
time.
tell you until like this week that you have to leave at the end of the month. Which is not even enough notice. I mean, if you kids and school and holidays and like.
The expectation is that families will notify their principal. And so what I did hear at the oversight hearing, at the city council oversight hearing, is that the intention is, oh, families will know before the break and they'll let the principals know and the parent coordinators will be able to help them through this process. However, I don't see every family coming forth or even knowing that they could, I could tell you these families were probably not listening to the city council hearing and know that they even have that option to go reach out to their principals or to reach out to their parent coordinators and say, hey, I got this notice. How can the school support us? Because I'm sure the school is, like I said, it's a main source of support. Some of these families, schools have been providing community closets, community pantries. The shelters are not equipped to cook food. And so some of these schools are making meals and serving, home cooked meals for these families to be able to enjoy. And there's zero communication to the families. In fact, there's people that have received these notices from the summer. And when they went back into the intake line, they were not offered a different shelter. They were offered a plane ticket or a bus ticket anywhere but here. And I think to your point, I think that is the ultimate goal. That is, and comes down to cruelty. And
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe we could reach out to principals in community boards District 2 and recommend that maybe they reach out to families that they know are in temporary housing and tell them to give them notice.
Well, just in the chat, Principal Fong said that he lost a few students already. They moved to Yonkers and they wanted to stay, but it was too far. The students were just beginning to speak some English after coming last January. And he said he didn't get to say goodbye to them. They just left. And that's his.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Principal Fong. Do you happen to know if these students were offered a bus route to continue going to your school?
Let's see.
And this would be a case in point that we know exists. It's just.
I know how
He
these.
said yes. He said yes.
Yeah, but who wants to be on a bus for?
Who wants to get up at 4
At
a.m.?
4 a.m. to put your child on a bus and then and then the kid's on the bus for hours.
2 hours each way.
And going to multiple
exhausted
schools.
and just.
And they would no longer, if your school has an after-school program, just know that your student is no longer eligible to participate unless they want to find their own way home, because the school bus transportation does not pick students up after school for the after-school program. They pick them up a lot of times even before school ends.
That's true.
So if the parents are trying to work and afford to buy, to pay for housing, to get out of temporary housing, they can't.
Correct. And this is, and that is an issue that many New Yorkers face, where parents could use this after-school care, but unfortunately, because they ride a school bus, they're unable to participate. Gavin brought up a great point in regards to special education, just our students being able to be identified. So just think you arrive here and any family that has a student with a disability, an IEP being created and implemented within 60 days is just non-existent, okay? So imagine you're going through that process and now you're moved and now you have to move schools and your IEP has not been finished, or maybe it was, and they finally got you a therapist, bilingual therapist, to be able to give you your related services. And now you're switching schools. And who knows if that school has available, to be able to provide those related services.
Also, as a teacher, I know you typically observe students for longer than 60 days before referring them for an IEP. Most IEPs come after, you've been with a student for at least 3 months. You observe them, you work with them, get to know them, and also you don't know them as learners. That's the same thing. The first 2 months of the year, before you know your students, you're learning the routines, you're getting to know them. To be starting over from scratch every 60 days is just horrifying. To a teacher, I'm like, I don't know how teachers are going to handle it.
There's another question from an attendee, Tamara Reed. Are these families guaranteed an immediate transfer or placement to new shelter if they have to leave current ones?
So what is the process? Is it what I was talking about, that reticketing? So they're standing online in the rain, in the cold, from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. in many cases, over multiple days in many cases. And this is what's projected to happen throughout the entire winter. To be reticketed and reassigned, and they have to do everything all over again.
All over again. In fact, you have individuals sleeping outside because they waited in line all day the previous day and it closed, and rather than, I mean, they don't have anywhere else to go. They will sleep in front of this intake center in order to hold their place in line. And it has been freezing outside. The other part, I'm not too sure if the humanitarian emergency response relief centers are the same, but I know historically, if you were going to DHS to find shelter as a family, your entire family needs to be there for that PATH program, like to that intake process, meaning students are not coming to school because they are having to wait in line to go through this intake into the PATH
Maybe
again.
street out there.
And I'm hoping to avoid that, but yeah, there are families that have said that they, unfortunately have, even coming in, that they have not had a place to stay.
And we talk a lot about learning loss in other contexts, but this is like learning loss. And these are students who've had significant educational disruptions. Like many of the students, teachers have explained to me that like they don't necessarily read and write in their native language because they may not have had, they may be like thinking very young, or they may not have had like formal schooling in their home country either. So, I mean, they're coming to this with like a lot of needs, and this is kind of really, really hurts.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions? The last call before we go to business session to discuss.
I always forget that.
Direct outreach, but this is not really I'm sure it's a pertinent question for individuals here, but not really one for the full committee. But are there direct action? Are there things that we as individuals can be doing on a person-to-person level to support our neighbors?
I would definitely reach out to your public schools and see, especially if you have a large population of students that are in temporary housing and this, or any economic need at this point, right? Helping the school create, if they have the space, in creating community pantries, community closets, and viable community, just welcoming community is, I would say, on a micro level, you could start within your own public school and find out what it is that your population may need. And if even beyond the local school is reaching out to different mutual aid groups and local charity groups that are putting on different resource fairs or holiday drives, just get involved because the need is, there's.
PS3 is doing a toy drive if anybody wants to buy toys for.
Yeah.
But even
families, temporary housing.
organizations that are already providing services and support for these families, Legal Aid, Coalition for the Homeless, New York Immigration Coalition, Advocates for Children. There are medical people, healthcare, Health and Hospitals is doing the work as well. So I would actually go first to the organization and say, how can I help? What do you need?
Yeah.
And what's going on in my immediate area?
A lot of PTAs for schools have like stepped up to like do things like put up a closet with like everything from like tampons to like winter coats to whatever, like deodorant, because like people really need everything. And a lot of these schools, the PTAs they're not the PTAs. We have such a wide range of PTAs in like Manhattan schools. Like there are ones that that earn like, that raise like $500,000 a year. And there are ones that have like $500 in their bank account, yeah, $1 million or more. But there are also ones that have like, just like a couple $1,000s in their bank account, and that's it. And so there's really like, I think, a need at some of the schools that have like large populations of like our new neighbors to, kind of bolster the PTAs that are trying to, kind of step up and do some of that mutual aid.
They're filling the gap,
Yeah.
in all honesty.
Yeah.
I have one last question for Gavin. Does the CEC plan on continuing the student and temporary housing committee? And if so, when is the first meeting?
We do plan on continuing that committee. We've had a little bit of a delay because we didn't have an administrative assistant for a while. Now we have hired an administrative assistant. So we will set up a committee and have a meeting hopefully very, very soon, early, like in hopefully January or February. We have our next CEC meeting coming up in next week, I think. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about at that.
Where is the next meeting?
The next meeting,
For PS 41 again?
I don't think you have a look. I haven't.
we
seen
don't
it.
have a location
Yeah.
yet. Oh no, it might be at the district office again. Our district office is 333 7th Avenue, which is the District 2 office, and I think it'll be there.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank our panelists for giving us an in-depth.
Thank you.
Thank you for addressing it and having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, it's really raising it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for a very informative meeting. Appreciate it very much.
Okay, thank you.
Jeffrey was so good that Jeffrey joins. It's,
Um,
you joined, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, you.
I learn a lot from you people, and I'm very grateful for what you do.
Jeffrey's on every committee meeting,
Yeah.
not just every committee meeting. Yes, he does. I hope he does.
Why is he not on the board?
Yeah, I know. We should get him on the board.
Yeah, well, we're gonna go into business session to discuss the resolution. We're gonna support your resolution that was passed with this committee, and with that, the public cannot comment, so you're able to stay and watch and listen. But with that, we're starting our session now.
All right.
Thank you
And
again
if
for
you-
coming.
I would love to, but I have my own community program meeting that I would like to speak at.
Go do it here,
Thank
Grace.
you. I appreciate you guys.
I'll take a seat in back and I'll listen to them. Okay.
I am going to, I guess, share my screen and put up the resolution.
Right. And we've made some edits to the existing resolution that's been passed by quite a few CECs. Who else has passed similar resolution? A couple of the other community boards have introduced similar resolutions as well, I think.
I feel like, this is a good resolution and the whereases are. Therefore be it resolved, see if we can make those a little
Stronger. Well, I added the alternative one that Keen had
That
mentioned in
Keen
the
said,
email,
yeah.
which was, and I actually kind of appreciate the idea that it's talking about it as like educational child abuse. This is like.
That's the accusation that they might pay attention to, I thought.
I won't stop anybody from saying that, but I think when we draw comparisons to very, very, very egregious things, such as child abuse or such as a death march, we lose some of the accuracy and realism. While this is horrific, it is not child abuse. Okay.
If you.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. I want to say something, but we can talk about the trauma that forced or involuntary displacement and relocation and the effects of that on the children and on the families, right? And really, we have to think about what child abuse is. If we have a very narrow framework, you know what I mean? This is not okay. Ultimately, this is a traumatizing event, and it's not okay for these families, period, end of story. So we don't have to use the words child abuse or death march or whatever, but we most certainly need to call out, this is the effect that something like this has on the families.
Right, you guys know that I'm a developmental psychologist and my textbooks are universal. This is child abuse. This is. This is
Trauma,
definition
the
of
level of trauma.
includes this kind of thing. There's educational child abuse, there's sexual child abuse, there's emotional.
Do you think this is
There's all-
reportable?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I actually do. It's in violation of a law that exists.
Yeah.
Because it's actually.
I'm not advocating, right,
No, no,
like,
but-
please, no, I'm not saying this is good. I'm only saying that hyperbole doesn't serve us well.
I don't know if it's hyperbole, right? Like we can describe absolutely the effects that something like this has on families.
I am purely describing it in my mind as hyperbole.
Yes.
Everybody else can have their own opinion about it.
It's not an opinion, it's a fact. I mean, American Psychological Association, Society for Research on Child Development, this is considered educational child abuse.
I've talked to multiple lawyers who are
But
like,
this
this
is-
is a violation, this is like absolutely a violation of kids' rights and like, and it is a level, getting to the level of abuse.
It is abuse. I mean, you even
Oh,
said
no,
earlier,
no.
Matt, you yourself said like, it's by design to make you uncomfortable, to want to flee the situation.
Which is why you should trust that I am no friend of this, and I am not a person who thinks that this is good, nor am I a person who thinks,
Nobody could
Right.
ever be that kind of person.
yes, there are
My friend,
there
you certainly would not.
those, but there are those people who exist. My only point is that I have in my mind
Eric Adams feels that way.
an idea of what child abuse is.
Yes, I know you have an idea.
Right.
And that is one of the problems. with the-
But wait for that period. I am happy to have you call it child abuse. I'm happy to have it included in here. My only point was that I think when we make big statements, we lose some of the ammunition that we have. When we are understated, we are much more effective. When we call things, it is disputable. Absolutely. Keen, I'm merely telling you what I think. I'm not stating these as facts, right? I'm only telling you what I think.
And what is most effective.
It's the framing, so. If we want to put child abuse in there, let's put it in and back it up.
Yeah.
In a succinct, one line whereas. Or bullet points says this, and this equals child abuse, and that's what's happening.
Here, let's find the.
Find a whereas that reflects that and then include it in the, therefore.
Well,
be-
what are we saying already to that?
Well, Jean, on the screen, hold on, let me.
I mean, you have.
Where I've listed 1 through 9, should we keep that? To just remind everybody on the board,
Yes, they're chronically absent.
go ahead, Matt.
I have no problem with 1 through 9. These read to me as whereas statements and not a therefore be it resolved.
Right, we're talking about the there get resolved, but we. still-
Right, and
Put it
my,
forward.
and my point was 1 through 9, read like whereas statements and don't belong in the therefore be it resolved.
Okay,
There,
so they'll take them out.
9 and the therefore be it resolved.
Right, if
Yeah,
if
no,
you're
I-
explaining your rationale for something, that's a whereas.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with that.
So take that out, all right.
I mean, you can move it to the there, but to the whereas, I'm not saying that. Then I would,
Then why don't we reiterate it?
I thought maybe she wanted us to like spell it out some more.
I think that you thought he was saying it more forceful and then missed her alternative,
Okay,
which was what she meant by, and I think you were
So
trying to
I'll-
make it more forceful by including those there, but I actually think this is what she meant. She meant for the therefore be it resolved.
okay,
That's accurate.
all right.
So
I mean, it does seem to me that that would sort of raise people's consciousness, how bad it is.
Yeah.
or it alternatively says, what are,
I
what,
don't like the numbers in
Those
the
people
therefore be
overstate
it
things.
resolved either. I just think we need like 1 or 2 strong, therefore be it further, maybe, but really.
Okay, I'll
there's-
take it
You
out.
know me, I want one big effectual ask
All right, I took it out.
or demand. So, but what is that? What is it we want? We
And
want-
Emma has her hand raised. Emma,
Yeah, sorry. I'm less familiar with, excuse me, what this should structurally be, but I do actually find those bullet points to be like pretty powerful in expressing the impact, right? The the attendee that joined the call asked for a list of what this does, and I think that that list is pretty strong. So I might advocate if it's possible to move it elsewhere in the resolution as opposed to
Eliminating it.
I don't know. It's just very clear. It's punchy. It's like cited. I don't know.
Is it redundant? I
Is
thought
it
it was.
redundant? Is it, does it mirror all of the whereases that exist? Yes or
You
no?
wrote it. Did you pull them from each of the
It
whereas?
was pulled from the whereases, Emma. So that's why I was
Yeah,
shortening.
So it's already in there.
it's a little duplicative. I just like it's short, it's sweet, it's crisp. I don't know. But I hear it. It is represented. I don't think we're getting rid of it.
Pull it, drop it into the last whereas.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think that if we nixed some of the whereases and replaced it with the pithier summaries, we might be better served, but I'm only throwing that out as by the look on everybody's faces, that went over really well.
I actually feel like I'm looking at the first bullet points. The 60-day rule jeopardizes homeless students' fundamental right to education under it. Can we use that language in one of the further be it resolved or be or
That's the first whereas.
That's the.
It should be.
yeah. I mean, I think
Let's
it
not
is.
make this too complicated. Let's just pull those, make them 3 or 4 whereases or 1 whereas with some bullet point and keep it moving.
Okay.
And who cares if it's redundant?
Cool.
Are we all okay with that?
Go ahead, Matt.
Therefore, be it resolved that CB2 believes the 60-day rule jeopardizes homeless students' fundamental right to education. And further be it resolved, CB2 urges Chancellor David C. Banks, right? Like we can make a belief statement as a therefore be it resolved.
It should be a belief statement because we've proven, right? We know that they are being disrupted educationally.
Therefore be it resolved, CB2 states it as unrefuted fact, and anybody who doesn't believe this is a moron. You know, okay, but.
I mean, honestly, I'm a mom, right? And I think about my child having to stand out in the cold for 12, 15 hours a day, hoping to have somewhere to sleep and not knowing if she's going to see her friends from school or go to school or the school where she receives most of her meals every day. That is child abuse. It is unquestionable.
I'm not sure who you're debating against.
I'm just saying, like,
Like, I'm not in.
if you read the resolution, it's not believe, these are their rights, and this
Okay.
violates their rights.
I'm
It's
happy
the
for you.
law, right? I mean, do you dispute that? Do you dispute?
Everything that you say, I believe.
Shut up.
I think.
It says, there is the McKinney.
I have a
Mental
very high bar. I have a very high bar for things that are facts and things that are not.
Authorizes
This is a belief.
the Federal Education for Homeless Children and Youth
If you
Program.
didn't believe it strongly, doesn't make it
It's
fact.
not belief, it's legislation. It's literally law.
Okay, then you disagree with me. I don't know what to
But
tell
it's
you.
not a matter of disagreeing. The law
you agree with
says
me.
one thing and the city's doing another.
Okay,
I mean, it seems simple, but for some people, I guess.
Matt, how can we make we're gonna keep Keen's,
I don't care that much. I'd be totally, put it anywhere you want. I don't care. This was a mild suggestion.
okay, all right.
Right, I mean, my alternative, the word, the other. Further be it resolved, before the word compassion is considered like, oh, these bleeding hearts. And I think that is a mistake to put compassion
Okay,
in there. I think, that's why I wanted to say, this is not compassion, this is abuse. We have to stop abuse.
okay, so
I
take
also think we should change urges. I think it should be demands.
demand.
I thought I had changed that to demands. I did in the document.
Okay.
That's weird. And didn't you guys see it after? I had changed it for sure.
You did.
What
That's
would you
weird.
change in the demand?
I said,
I changed it back. I didn't like it.
it's mayor.
Did you change it back?
Because I had
All right,
changed it to community. board
If
to
you look at the
advance.
screen, I just put it in.
Okay, great.
And then Mara, I think, wrote in, there's another, like this where,
Oh, you know what? Forget those.
forget those.
Forget
Okay,
those.
wait a
We don't
second,
need to
wait.
muck it up.
Can I just define what educational abuse is? A failure to educate a student or attend to special education needs.
And that's educational abuse, and I had a problem with the phrase child abuse.
So let's call it educational.
That I'm
abuse.
fine with. That I'm fine with.
Let's change it to educational abuse.
But let's do educational abuse of children. I mean, like, I don't know why we're splitting hairs on this, but
Plus the term, if that's the thing it's still abuse.
Child abuse in most people's mind has
Think
physical.
this is wrong.
And
It's abuse. It's human.
I know it's other people's children, but just close your eyes for a
then you
second
win.
and
If
imagine
your
it's
point
your
is
own.
convince other people, then I'm.
For a reason, like I'm not.
No, my point is to
agree.
then, and I think the government will.
All right, put it in.
Well, we should be.
I don't like educational.
She doesn't like
you don't
educational.
It is abuse. We don't have to qualify it. It's abuse, child abuse, whether it's educational or otherwise. It is abuse.
I think abuse definitely needs to stay in there, but whether we call it educational child abuse or educational abuse, whatever. I mean, I don't. If you feel really strongly about it, I think.
You said you wanted stronger language. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, educational abuse is a compromise, but it's good. It's obviously of children.
That's right.
So we don't have to put child in.
Educational abuse, just people who are reading it, who don't care about our new neighbors and don't see them as human, which is much of the city. Educational abuse, who cares? Why should they be here, going to our public schools and our tax dollars are paying for it? Like, it's not, these are human beings, people. They are children, they are babies.
Are there cameras in here that I'm unaware of?
There are cameras.
Yeah, right here.
and
No, but I mean, for the news, I mean.
It's not about the news. It's about children, Matt. Which is a very serious.
Don't care about?
I didn't say that. You said that.
All right,
These are children.
I think
Being
that
ripped.
this can be an email.
I feel strongly enough about it. I don't feel like we need to take out child abuse. How does everybody else feel about? So educational child abuse, Mar feels very strongly that it should remain that way.
It's abuse. Why does any abuse of a child have to be qualified? Any abuse.
Did we include the citation that Cheryl shared in the chat that defines abuse and like gives our strong justification for using that language? And we could just use that in citation, and then we have said the strongest terms, and we have also said, like, for those of whom might question the legitimacy of applying child abuse as a phrase here, like, see the fact.
Did Cheryl put that in the chat?
Right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sent the link. She
yeah,
sent
it's an act.
what is child abuse?
Yeah, it's an act which results in the death, serious physical or emotional harm of children. That's all.
Okay,
it is.
so
But
then
this is pretty serious physical and emotional harm. Folks are in the cold. Folks are having educational disruption. It's
so let's add the link.
so we can cite it.
yeah, as a whereas, and then,
Yeah. It's child abuse.
Yeah,
okay.
let's add a whereas that.
Could you put that,
child abuse.
Cheryl, could you put that into the, thank you.
So there's the link, the hhs.gov link. Obviously they're defining it in terms of caregivers and individual parents, but it's really the act on any entity, right, towards children. Any act or failure to act that results in the direct death, serious physical or emotional harm, or exploitation of children. I mean, there it is.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
are you gonna copy the chat? The link in the chat? Because are you adding it to the whereas?
I could put it on the, hold on a second, I could put it on the document directly.
Mars right now working on a whereas that uses that.
I'm gonna put it at the very bottom.
You're in the document?
Oh, you know what, I can't edit it. Let's say, wait, hold on a second. Let me try this.
Email me the link and I can add it as a link, Cheryl.
Okay.
All right.
Wait, where is the quote that Cheryl just gave us?
It's in the
In the
chat.
chat, it's in the chat.
Here
I
it
know,
is.
but it's Health and Human Services, but it's not what you said. It the. Very from child to child, recognizing the signs. These are two,
Death, serious physical or emotional harm.
It's right above the link.
Top bullet.
Do you see it?
She's got it. She's got it.
Okay.
And the second portion is, I think, powerful as well, which is an act of or failure to act, which presents an imminent risk of serious harm.
Yeah,
I mean,
Those both feel.
maybe it's the second one, but we'll see. All right.
Okay.
Not the CD, it's Health and Hospitals, right? Let me change it. All right.
So do you still want to reduce the number of whereas to make it tighter?
As it stands right now,
We have 14 whereas. 15 with this one added.
they can be long, the whereas it can be long, it's just, we just have to bolster the, therefore be it resolved, because that's what's read.
Yeah. And I think it's important because there's a lot of information there that's really detailed on why this is important and the links that people can follow if they have questions about it.
Right.
So is everybody comfortable with those being sort of the edits we add in?
And then, Mara, I have a link for the New York State definition of child abuse also, so I'll send that to you as well. I'll send it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Does the
I can
state fall into the definition of parent or caretaker?
What was that, Matt?
Does the city or state fall into the definition of parent or caretaker?
No, it's so basically it literally says a person who perpetrates any of these actions against a child. You know, so it talks about the parent or caregiver or a person who's legally responsible, but you know, they basically talk about a person who perpetrates. I mean, you know, you don't have to be a parent or a caregiver to abuse a child, you know, so.
You could be a mayor.
Or it is a mayor.
Yeah, it's a man.
So can I bring up my suggestion for in the full board meeting, if we're going to present this resolution, a way to, I mean, we push through a lot of resolutions that nobody reads. I mean, that's the reality of like a community board. And I think we all feel pretty strongly that this is a pretty horrific thing that's being done. I really would like to push the elected officials that show up at our meetings to make a commitment to do something about it if they're, I mean, we can't force them to, but push them to. And I know Patricia said that at some past meetings, committees have called out each person and asked them questions about a resolution. How does everybody feel about pushing? Some of them have already committed to do things. Christopher Marty is co-sponsor of the city council bill on the banning any length to shelter stays. Eric Botcher has made statements publicly. I think that Brad Hoylman has as well. For the people that have not yet, how does everybody feel about maybe raising our hands and asking, like, have you taken a stance on this?
Like when they show up to our meeting in the beginning and they talk about.
That makes a lot of sense to do that.
I think this is like a big enough thing.
Right, and by the way, you could also do Chris Marty and Eric Botcher.
Chris already signed on.
I know they're
I
fine, but.
think we should call them and say, thank you. Thank you for signing on.
I understand, and they'll say, yes, I really believe it's very strong. I mean, they need to be pushed also.
But I think that even calling them out and saying, thank you for co-signing on this, or thank you for the statement. We are urging you to continue to push back on making sure.
Also, this committee particularly works on the children. I mean,
Right.
it is not fair to the adults either.
Right.
But I think it's particularly egregious for the kids.
Yeah,
And that's what we have to make sure they understand that. Because as Mark said, the people who don't care about the migrants and the asylum seekers, they sort of think they're all these homeless men and not aware of what's happening with kids.
Yeah.
Not
Try-
that I'm,
Try to
Gonna
answer.
say, is that based on anything or?
but I think the kids are.
What were you gonna say, Rich?
I'm just trying to anticipate the questions or challenges that might come up in the discussion at the full board. Realizing that many people don't read it. I only think, oh, yeah, I think that somebody might want to put in something about, this is really Texas's fault. You know, they'll say that we're addressing an issue here that was caused by percentage of migrants here, but it'll just be a topic.
I mean, I don't think that any of the elected officials are gonna do that. I can't see, somebody from Carlina Rivera's office saying,
No, no.
this is Texas. I can see board members bringing
Yeah.
that up, and I do think that then we're gonna have to defend why this is important.
Yeah, they're gonna say there's this cost and it's,
Only one or two.
yeah.
There may be those people and that, and
We know who's gonna vote no on this already, and whatever we say is not gonna change their mind, so. I mean,
they're
why?
gonna rant, they're gonna rant.
They're gonna
anyway,
rant, let's
so-
not give that kind of energy a platform,
Okay, all right.
you know?
They're
I
gonna,
think we just say thank you, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, moving on.
Much risk of this not being passed. by the board, right? You're right. Oh, I expect that.
because it's gonna get into, this is why the budget cuts are being made and it's, I don't think it's gonna be easy.
Although, as we've talked about over and over again, this is going to be a
Yeah.
hit to the budget. Like we
Sure.
have these people here anyway, but the idea of moving them every 2 months and having them apply and the manpower and the busing and the schools funding.
Well,
it's like-
somebody's getting that contract, right, to do these big reticketing things, there are venues getting paid to give space. There are people being hired or companies, getting like brand ambassadors almost, like they were doing for COVID, these temporary workers, and then there's more money moving, like, it's a machine.
Right, and they're now building this giant facility for 500 families in Brooklyn that doesn't meet the minimal requirements that families are supposed to be given in shelters.
Wow.
But I think you made the right point. It's actually, that's the
Yes.
rebuttal to.
That is the rebuttal, whether it's what the reason that we believe in it,
That's right.
that is the rebuttal to.
That's the point.
Okay.
There's this whole other, historically, when there were refugees that moved to Miami, over time, it was the greatest thing that happened to the city, and so. I think this will play out well.
Well, I mean, that's the history of New York.
Yeah.
It's like huge immigration,
Yeah,
influxes that were, resented by large swaths of the population and then ended up becoming sort of what New York is. This is just the newest one and we're
Okay.
treating them abysmally.
I let us off on a tangent, but I just,
All right, so then there's no more talk on this, we'll just vote.
yeah,
with everyone present. We
All
have
right, I'm
four.
just adding some of these definitions.
Do we have to finalize it before we vote on it? Yes.
So we can vote on it and then we'll pass it around.
On the spirit.
Okay.
But let's see, this last whereas, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services defines child abuse as an act or failure to act which presents an imminent risk of serious harm. And this next one is actually, the state of New York defines maltreatment of children as referring to the quality of care of a child is receiving from those responsible for the child. Maltreatment occurs when a parent or other persons legally responsible for the care of a child harms a child or places a child in imminent danger of harm by failing to exercise the minimum degree of care and providing the child with any of the following: food, clothing, shelter, education, or medical care. Now, yes, maltreatment, Matt, before you jump all over it, it's not abuse. But this really tells the whole story. And
How to
it
convert
is,
allies into people who don't care about your thing.
it is as egregious, in my opinion.
Could we make this an email?
It's also synonymous with neglect, according to the state of New York. So I think that should be another word.
We can have neglect as well as be separate.
Right, maltreatment is the overarching term and abuse and neglect are two subterms. So maltreatment.
The state
Neglect is-
says child maltreatment and neglect are the same.
I would be happy with.
Not the same, I mean. Maltreatment is the overarching word. Neglect is maltreatment, abuse is maltreatment.
Well,
Maltreatment, yeah, I think.
some abuse. All abuse is maltreatment, but not all maltreatment is abuse.
Exactly, some maltreatment is neglect,
And like, I think of,
which is actually worse than abuse, by the way,
I'm,
in some ways.
please keep telling me all the things, like, I'm happy for you. Motion to adjourn.
Can we vote?
We need to vote, we
on
need
the
to vote.
resolution?
So in the spirit of this, we're gonna vote. How do you vote in this meeting before, and then we'll pass it around.
I mean, I'm a yes that got awfully close to an abstain, but I'll stick with
Okay.
yes.
Believe in it, even if you disagree with some of it.
And we're still working on it before full board.
You guys know because I had a very minor thing that like, I didn't think the word child abuse reached this level. Y'all have done an excellent job of convincing me that y'all are unhinged, but continue.
Have we
Okay.
not convinced you that this
Well,
qualifies as?
it doesn't.
I just. Yeah, I vote yes, yeah.
Key,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so with everyone here, it passes.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, yeah.
do they get to vote on?
Yeah.
even though they-
Once we hit quorum, right?
Oh,
Yeah, it just doesn't, it's just a.
On whether she's been left, her appearances. So why don't you take the vote and then you can ask her tomorrow whether you can. But it's better to have. it
Yes.
in hand.
okay,
But I think 5 is enough.
okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Cheryl, how do you vote? Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Thumbs up.
I vote yes, but does my vote count?
Yes,
Yes.
Oh, it does. Oh, because we have quorum in person. Okay, yeah, I vote yes.
and Emma is a yes, she said yes?
Yeah, also, yes, thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to adjourn our meet. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you.
And so with that, I'm going to adjourn our meeting. Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
You can stop the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, and-
I'm
Not happy.
Those are very to what I was just.
At a meeting, you came, oh, no, you were.
I never came to a meeting. Yeah, I was online. Yeah.
We never met you in person.
I've
We just
seen
talked on
you.
the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Is that really?
I've never met you in person.
Yeah, we never met. I think we met in Zoom many times. I mean, like,
Yes, that's it. is that we-
but not face to face.
And we talked on the. phone.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay, well,
I mean, I've met Mara in person before, but that's.
you must have met us.
These-